Welcome, everyone. My name is Ari Greenblatt, and I am the host of Nonlinear, a podcast where we connect ambitious high schoolers to successful individuals from all different professions, hearing their nonlinear paths to the top. Today's guest is Shahar Azani, the Senior Vice President of the Jewish Broadcasting Service and founder and principal of Fourth Dimension Strategies. Shahar has had an extensive career that encompasses law, politics, advocacy, and more. He served as a legal counselor for Chaim Zodak & Co., a firm specializing in corporate and commercial law. He then became the Deputy Ambassador of Israel in Nairobi, Kenya. He's also served as a consul for public diplomacy and culture in the Consulate General's office to Israel in Los Angeles. Shahar has additionally served as the New York Executive Director of Stand With Us, an international nonpartisan organization that equips and educates young people with the tools they need to fight anti-Semitism. Currently, he sits on the board of Kai AI and is an author for the Jewish Journal. He has his MBA and law degree from Bar Ilan University. Shahar, it's an honor to have you on the show.
It's my pleasure to be with you on the show, Ari. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Shahar, you are from Israel. This show is for high schoolers. Can you tell us a little bit about what you were like in high school?
Well, I can tell you that as a high schooler, I was kind of a nerd. I'll admit to that. I was very much an old soul, as they say. My dreams, though, started exactly there. When I thought of myself in the future as a high schooler, I really saw the world. I was fascinated by the world, and I knew that at some point I would very much like to do something representing Israel in the great wide world. And if I can do it from tiny, small Israel, I can only imagine the kind of dreams you and your peers have today, Ari.
Yeah, I think that's super special. And I love that you had that goal in mind and you knew what you want to do from a young age. Um, can you
Isn't
tell
it a
us?
gift? It's a gift, right? That's the
Yeah.
biggest gift I think I've ever gotten in my life, knowing my direction in life.
Yeah, a lot of people, this show is for those who may have direction and those who may not, so that we all can have a better sense of our futures and our career and really take hold of it and learn from those who've gone through these nonlinear paths. Um, can you tell us, so after high school, did you serve in the army in Israel? And can you tell us a little bit about what that experience is like?
Yes, I'll actually share with you some planning, as they say it. So I'm in the fifth or sixth grade, and Israelis, as we grow up, we know we're going to be part of the Israel Defense Forces. And I
Mhm.
think to myself, what am I going to do in the IDF? What role am I going to take? Because I really want to have a meaningful service. So I
Mhm.
remember playing with my friend, and his dad was an officer in the army, and he came in wearing uniform. And as a kid, I come up to him and ask him, what do you think I should do in the army? And he looks at me, in the fifth, sixth grade, and he says, you want to do something interesting? You should study Arabic. That will really be nice to know. And, thinking nothing of it, but I remember. And years later, when I got to high school, I was one of five students who actually took Arabic as a major subject, where 95% of my friends took technology, biotechnology, and now they have like billion-dollar startups in the Silicon Valley. And I took Arabic and haven't regretted it, not even for a minute. First of all, because of Israel's geostrategic location, and second
Right.
of all, because of the kind of army service I was able to do, being part of the IDF, which I tell you, Ari, 60-year-old men or people would dream of having such an human interaction the way I had in the army as really a young guy.
What exactly were you doing in the army?
Well, working for the benefit of Israel on a variety of levels, interacting with the Arabic language, which included, media outlets and beyond, understanding the regional situation, and actually working to save lives every day. I served in the army during the height of the Oslo Accords. When the Oslo Accords were signed in 1993 and then 1994, Israel was awash with suicide terror and blood that was introduced basically not just to Israel, but in many ways to the world. Suicide terror has become rampant, buses exploded. It was a harsh time that combined the hopes for a great, messianic, almost peaceful time, side by side with, terrible realities of atrocities and cruelty. So the situation on the ground was is very much to this day seared in my heart and on my mind, and the experiences that really shaped me to become who I am today.
Hmm. So, like living in Israel, could you feel? Because I've been to Israel only twice. I hope to go as often as I can. But I feel like when I'm there, I feel a connection amongst the people who are, above high school age because they've all served in the army. Can you tell me a little bit about like is that the feeling, and do you feel that? And
Ooh,
do you feel a
imagine
kinship with everybody?
yeah, imagine an electronic device that works out there and every once in a while goes back for a recharge. That's exactly how I feel when I get to Israel. Every time I go, and I try to go every few months, first of all, what you see, Ari, is how incredibly the country is changing on a minute by minute basis with new roads and new buildings, and you can really feel the energy, the hunger, the desire for life in such an area that is so engulfed. All around you is so much plight and death, from Syria to Lebanon to Yemen to people who are struggling, and then you have such a force for life in Israel that manifests itself on so many levels, from partying in major cities to enjoying on the beach to incredible startup technology of people who are hungry to make a difference, to succeed. One of the best sentences I love out of the Startup Nation book is that realization. When somebody comes into the office and listens to their boss, they think, two things. One is, I love listening to it and doing what needs to be done. But secondly, and even more importantly, how come she's the boss and not I? It's like this desire, this hunger that really is a characteristic of what Israel is today. And if when you get to Israel, you get a sense of that energy. And working here for Israel, I feel like I'm a beam of that energy, a connector of that energy to everything, not just Jewish, but also general public, American and beyond.
Yeah, I think I think you've done that your entire career. I think you've served as that beam, and I can't wait to talk more about it. So, after the army, you went to Bar Ilan University and you studied business and law. Can you tell us why business and law? I'm very interested in business, but when I began high school, I was set on law. I took a bunch of law classes, I read a lot, and but I just thought that business was more for me. Why did you choose to study both? And what are the different lenses, maybe, that business and law have given you, and how have you applied them throughout your career? That's a lot, but tell me what you got.
I know. Let's unwrap it. The fact is that that wasn't my first choice. Actually, my first choice, I remember, I applied to study at the time when there wasn't online applications, and it was still like fill the forms many eons ago before the Earth came into being. And I remember I was outside of Israel, and my mom was filling the forms for me, and she asked me, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, for me, it's English literature, history, and philosophy." So I'll never forget her reply. She said, "Let me just write it down over my dead body." It's like, what are you going to do with that? So we had a bit of a back and forth. And then being a lawyer has always been in the back of my mind as something I'd like to pursue. So she said, "You know what? I'll strike a deal with you. Number one, there is a special program at Bar Ilan that does MBA and law degree in 3 years, and it only accepts 10 students. And number two, I'm going to put your history and philosophy. And whichever one wins, wins." I said, "Okay, fair enough," knowing that there is no chance on earth they're going to take Shahar Azani, of all people, to that specific 10 slot program. And I knew that my path was safe and secure to English literature. And lo and behold, I got in. And I have to tell you, I relished the studies themselves, because on the business level, it allowed you to plan ahead and think where you want to go and identify the forces around you. But the legal sphere gave you the analytical sphere,
Mm,
the analytical knowledge to decipher the machine and know its machination to reach the goal. And I have used those skills, forget about the law firm, during the arbitrations, negotiations, and litigation in court, to understand who you're standing in front of, to
mhm,
know, to get to the bottom of their motivation, to see through what they want to achieve, and to be able to align your interests in order to achieve the common goal is an incredible gift. And I'm talking to you about the legal world, but if you listen to it, you actually hear what diplomacy is all about. And I have used my legal skills and business skills every day as a diplomat in making sure that initiatives actually happen, not just on the vision level, but on the actual execution. How can we make this happen? What kind of agreement do we need to sign? How can I understand the boundaries of my partner so that I can play within them and make it feasible in a way that they even don't understand? And that those legal skills came in very handy, Ari, very handy.
Let's talk about it. After college, you go to Nairobi, Kenya, and you work at a legal counsel first, and then
Right.
you go to Nairobi, Kenya, and you serve as a deputy ambassador there. Um, First, I think you bridge how I think you talked about how you took business and you took law and you can apply them in diplomacy. But can you talk about being that beam and then using those lenses in Nairobi, Kenya? And how did you do it exactly?
Absolutely. First of all, I can tell you again, just because I'm all in for a great smile. Knowing Arabic, when I got into the Israeli Foreign Ministry through the diplomatic course, you apply. We had about thousands of applications. Somehow I was able to filter through. And when I started my term at the foreign ministry, they looked at my skills and they said, Arabic, that's great, you should go to Cairo, where we have an embassy, it's going to be great. So they trained me in the Middle Eastern division, and then the appointment committee convenes and says, Shahar, congratulations, Mazel Tov, you're going to Nairobi, Kenya. What do you mean Nairobi, Kenya? There is a need, you have to go. Great. Actually, I have to be honest, Ari, I was excited because as an Israeli who grew up in the Middle East, embedded in everything politics and geopolitics of the region, going to a different sphere was exciting to me. I'm going to see a new world. I'm going to experience Israel through a different lens. And then I come to this unbelievable diplomatic playground where I have to use my skills in order to navigate the stormy waters of diplomacy. Oh, Shachar, you'll ask me, what's so stormy about the diplomatic waters in Nairobi, Kenya? Well, few people know, Ari, that Nairobi is actually the hub of the United Nations Environment Program, a
Mm,
Kyoto Protocol, gas house effect, and the United Nations Human Settlement Program. It actually houses dozens of international missions that are not in Nairobi for the sake of bilateral relations with Kenya or East Africa, but focused on United Nations issues, all missions that are dedicated for those goals, which is truly unbelievable. And what you're able to achieve through working on the bilateral relations with Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Zambia, Malawi, the Seychelles, while at the same time representing Israel at the United Nations. Imagine
mhm,
when you had to reach out. One of my greatest achievements is signing an agreement of collaboration between Israel and the United Nations Human Settlement Program. So the first phase was having a delegation in Israel. Great technical skills, organize a visit, they come back. Second phase was signing an agreement. The agreement was signed. And here is what I want to tell you, Ari. There is this moment where I come to meet with the UN officials at the UN headquarters. And I sit in front of them, one Israeli diplomat, in front of five very respectable UN officials. And we
mhm.
talk about the agreement that was just signed between the Director General of the Israeli Foreign Ministry and the head of the UN Human Settlement Program, UN Habitat. And they look at me and say, this is a wonderful agreement. We really do have to look into the possibilities of examining the different options on the table to potentially looking into implementing it in the years to come. So as an Israeli, I got to learn a lot of adjectives. Once that hour was over, I remember I'm heading out, and then I turn back and I say, I just have one quick question for you before I leave. I said, yeah, what do you want to know? I said, what's the next thing that you do? I said, do? What do you mean do? I said, activity, course, seminar, project. Oh, we have a local economic development seminar for North Eastern Province municipalities.
Mhm.
I got it, I said. Do you happen to have the books, the study materials? Oh, yes, we do. Why do you want those? I said, I'm just thinking, we already have an agreement that was signed. Maybe I can talk to Israel and we can get somebody to come and help you hold the books, erase the blackboard, get you some water if you need, kind of like start implementing. And they look at me and said, okay, here are the books, but you think you can make that happen in 3 months? And to be honest, Ari, if you know Israel, if I call them and say we have something in 3 months, Israel will reply saying, "Oh, call us in two. It's way too early."
Yeah.
What happened as a result, Ari? was that we were able to bring an expert on local economic development to be part of the program, and it ended up with the United Nations financing Israeli knowledge that helped municipalities in that area of northern Kenya. Isn't that the Bermuda Triangle of business, diplomacy, and law?
Certainly sounds like it. Certainly sounds like it. After you made that happen and like you built that bridge, like did you feel a certain way? Did you know that, diplomacy was really the career for you?
Imagine Fantasia by Disney, right? You are this conductor and everything around you is dancing. So all you can see, think the Matrix, right? When
Hmm.
you see the numbers, think about how everywhere you look is an opportunity. Everywhere
Yeah.
you look is a potential project. And Israel gives you that diplomatic elasticity to achieve. If you initiate, you can make it happen. It could be one Friday when I go with the embassy staff to hand out toys in Kibera, the world's largest slum, and it wasn't something diplomatic, just something we used to do as friends, and seeing a woman on a wheelbarrow. And I asked the person who accompanied me, what's happening, Susan? She said, oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about what? I said, what is she doing on a wheelbarrow? Oh, she's about to give birth. That's how we transport them. I said, that's impossible. Millions of people. I mean, the level of again, the world's biggest slum. So we're able to organize in no time Magen David Adom, Israel's Magen David Adom, to donate 2 ambulances to Kibera. No work plan, no wait for next year, all based on connections and initiatives to make something happen. When you sit at the United Nations and you think about the initiatives, because Israel is such a leader when it comes to sustainable development and the climate, and Israel's arid climate and other challenges, it's so similar to the world. And yet, Ari, you see the great frustration of Israel's geopolitical positioning that sometimes prevents us from conveying that knowledge. And to realize that your role as a diplomat is to be that connector, to know when to put people together and to know when to take a step back and let the professionals do their professional dance. That is the epitome of diplomacy. So I felt good and ready for the next challenge. And what do you want out of this life if not, that kind of passion that pushes you forward?
Yeah. I like that. I like that. Some people, are in the pursuit of glory. I used to be that way. I used to think I want to be on TV. I want to do all of these incredible things. But what really matters is making a difference, and the glory and all of that comes after, or it doesn't come, and it doesn't matter. That's
The
how I see it.
glory, the glory is embedded to what you do and who you are. And you know how I translate it to today's conversation, Ari?
Hmm.
In If you look in the let's say a big part of my life has always been standing up for Israel. So for many people it's all about the viral videos, right? If I have a lot of following on social media, if I make another viral video. But here is the truth is that as much as these videos matter, what matters most is life itself. How can you make a difference on a daily basis so that the connection between Israel and the world is alive and kicking and vibrant? That
Hmm.
tourists come to Israel, that businesses thrive in Israel. That bottom line sometimes goes amiss when people are chasing only their online glory and online presence without any connection to reality on the ground. The truth is that reality on the ground matters. And for instance, what happened recently with Ben and Jerry's in
Hmm.
Israel and the boycott from Vermont and the fact that Ben and Jerry's Israel fought back and won was one of those examples where on one sphere you can do your viral videos, but if it doesn't have a real life result, if the only result you're seeking is gaining 15K more followers, then that in my eyes is futile. The result has to be very focused on making a difference on the ground. And like you say, Ari, it's making a difference. I always say it's the sun versus the fireflies. I adore the sun. I think it's mighty powerful. But I really believe that fireflies coming together from all over making goodness can outshine the sun itself. That's how I see ourselves.
I want that to be the lesson. I want that to be the takeaway of today's podcast. Um, okay, let's fast forward a little bit in your career. Tell us about Stand With Us. My brother, he did a conference at Stand With Us. He said he absolutely loved it, and he shared some of the lessons that he learned on fighting anti-Semitism and and just how to become, like a vigilant Jew in the face of like today's era. Can you talk to us a little bit about um, why that's important? And could you maybe give us, really quick, some of the skills and some of the ideas that you think of when you think about training to, like, for defense?
So here is, I'll tell you this, Ari. First of all, what attracted me to stand with us is exactly what you and I are doing today, and why I adore what you do in your podcast. For me, it's always been about empowerment. If the Almighty gave me skills and I'm able to pass them on and empower other young leaders to rise to the occasion, that is all that I seek to do. And Stand With Us is an incredible platform to empower young people to be who they are. And what I want to tell people first and foremost is to know, and that's what I always said when I was with Stand With Us, and every time I speak to students, young people, and anyone really, is first, you're not alone. You are
Mhm.
not alone wherever you are. If you understand that there is a power grid of Zionism, there is a power grid of like minded people all over the country who are connected through different systems, through Stand With Us and federations and Birthright and Masa and Asochnut and others, Shlichim and schools, and you can always find people who feel like you. The enemy, your adversary, likes to isolate you and make you feel like you're weak and vulnerable and alone. So the first thing you need to know is you're not alone ever. The second thing I always ask people to do, and that is my main takeaway as a high schooler and as somebody who lived that life, and that's what I want to tell, and that's what you're doing, Ari, and I want to tell all of our listeners and viewers, is to do. To dare. You know how it is when you grow up today and you look at the international system and you tell yourself, nobody's going to listen to me. I'm going to send my CV somewhere and nobody's going to get them. Nothing is going to happen as a result. I'm going to just drown in this sea of information. Nobody's going to pay attention. Wrong. That's exactly what despair is. What they're trying to make you into this apathetic machine. But the truth is that all you have to do is have faith and dare, and things will happen for you. You know how I got my first position straight out of the army, working as local staff at the Israeli embassy in London? I emailed info at London MFA GOVIL with a copy of my CV. What CV did I have, Ari? I just graduated high school and went to the army. And I emailed them saying, "Hi, I'm just wondering if you have any interesting opening. I'd love to get involved." And guess what? They emailed me back saying, "Here is our phone. Call us." And I called them and we had an interview. And then I landed in London before Skype, mind you. So they told me, "You sound great." I'll never forget the term. "You sound like a lovely chap, but we really have to see you before we make a decision." So I bought an open ticket for a year,
Oh my
landed in
God.
London, got the job, found myself an apartment, and stayed for the year to do in unbelievable work. Where at the age of 21, I was taking the elevator at the Churchill with Dennis Ross, Aaron Miller, and the late Madeleine Albright on a way to a Netanyahu Arafat Albright summit. Like, you can imagine that the only thought that was running through my mind at that moment was, where is my mommy? So that's what I want to tell everyone who listens to us. Don't be shy. Dare and have faith and believe in yourself, because only through that daring and outreach will you be able to achieve the result you want to get.
I love that. I love that. Fortune favors the bold. My dad tells me all the time.
Yeah?
I love it. Shahar, I have two more questions for you. When we first met, you were doing a conference in New York, and I was in attendance, and you talked to us about Israel and Palestine and how important it is today to find the middle ground and the people who aren't anti Semitic, but who just need to be informed or who just need to find, who just need to be educated. Talk to us about education and why it's important, especially in this issue, and especially in, an era as dire as the present.
I'll actually, my answer will be even better in that regard, because if you think of my answer not just in the Israeli Palestinian conflict, but in general terms, about building bridges as a society between different groups. So, on the Israeli Palestinian issue, the reality is we have the lovers and we have the haters. But the truth is that there are so many, many more people in the middle who have no idea about the details of this conflict. And many a time we play to our kishke, right? We wanna be with the lovers, we wanna fight the haters, we feed on off of each other. But the truth is that if we take a moment to try and use our skills to analyze and identify who is it that I'm speaking to, who is it that I want to speak to, what do they know or don't know, never assume knowledge, and what are they interested in. Imagine the bridges you'll be able to build. Now, it's all about building that initial bridge so that later on, once people have some sort of acquaintance, it's much more difficult to lie to them with propaganda. They'll get to think, they'll say, hey, I know Ari. Ari is a great guy. He came over and he was teaching us some science and math and English after school to help us. And I know he's Jewish and he loves Israel. So I don't get it how you blame Israel in such a blanket way to be the ultimate evil. Maybe I should talk to Ari and ask him. That's the kind of bridges we want between people that can overcome barriers and walls that sometimes exist. So I'll give you a specific example. When I used to go out and speak, I spoke to a book club, and they said they would love to hear about my favorite book. So, truly, I came with Golda Meir's book, My Life, because it really resonates with what I did in Africa. And I read a couple of pages from that book. It wasn't an Israel event. I was interacting on their level because they're into books. I'll go and speak as an attorney about Israel's non existent, omnipotent constitution and how it manifests itself in Israel. It's not an Israeli talk, it's a legal talk relating to the professional interests of people. I will do a great night of cheese and wine with the hip story artist Amit Shimoni, who will show different leaders with different world leaders with interesting hairdos. So I will bring Amit just to have some fun at night on college campus, and he will talk about his creative juices and spirit. And that's an interesting evening. The fact that it happens to be Israel, great. All I'm saying is to be able to build bridges, you don't do it with a hammer, you do it with a chisel. And you take a moment to listen, to think about who you interact with, to ask yourself not just what interests you, but what interests them. And that's how you build bridges. And by the way, not just on Israel.
I love that answer. Shahar, is there any final advice that you want to give to high schoolers that we didn't talk about today? Whether they're interested in diplomacy, whether they're interested in law or a business, is there any advice that you want people to walk away with from today and carry throughout the rest of their lives?
So we spoke about dare, right? To dare
Mhm.
to step forward and do and reach out. And I'll also say that they need to follow your example, Ari, of making sure you get what you want nicely, but you get what you want done. And when you decided you and I should have this conversation, you made sure to follow up. And even though schedules sometimes collided and it wasn't the most convenient thing to do, you made sure to get it done, and you had the tenacity and you knew what your goal was and you made it happen. And that kind of tenacity is what I wish upon all of you listening today, is to identify your goal and don't be shy about achieving it, even if it means that you have to follow up once, twice, sometimes thrice, because at the end of the day, the value of what you will achieve will resonate far more and far beyond any kind of such attempt. And you always have to remember, don't be shy in your outreach efforts. It will define your lives, and might I say, not just the professional ones, but the personal ones. So I urge each and every one of you, and I invite you to follow Ari's example, but also feel free to be in touch. I'm also out there on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Facebook. You can always reach out to me, and I'll try to respond. I love those kind of interactions and nurturing the powers to be, exactly as we're having this conversation today. So just keep up the great work. And Ari, you keep on inspiring people all over. You definitely did it to me.
Thank you so much, Shahar. You've inspired me, really. You've inspired me. And I'm just so grateful for your insights, you spending the time and sharing your advice with all of us today. It's been a blessing. More information on Shahar will be available on the website, and his contact information will also be there, as well as his most recent articles. Thank you so much for your time, Shahar. It's just been a blessing.
Thank you very much, Ari. Much appreciated.